So think about the exact moment a New Year's resolution dies.
Oh, yeah. We all know that exact feeling.
Right. It's usually somewhere around, like, the second week of February. You
Always February.
always. You skip the gym on a Tuesday because, well, it's raining, or, you hit snooze instead of writing that novel before work.
Right.
And in that exact moment, the entire architecture of your goal it just collapses.
It completely falls apart.
Yeah, you don't just miss a day. I mean, you abandon the whole identity.
Yeah.
And we usually blame our willpower, right? We tell ourselves we just didn't want it enough, or we failed to manifest it.
Or we lost touch with our why. That's a big one.
Exactly, the why. We use these incredibly vague, sort of atmospheric concepts to try and construct something as complex and load-bearing as a human life.
Which is crazy when you think about it.
It really is.
Okay.
So today, for you listening, we are moving entirely away from that vague, feel-good self-help space. We have a profoundly interesting source text in front of us today, titled The Architect of Your Own Meaning.
It's quite a dense read, but so rewarding.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're going to be exploring his core framework, which is called Meta-Matics.
Meta-Matics.
The mission for this deep dive is to show you how to literalize the architecture of your transformation, like literally graph it out.
Right.
We're going to look at how to graph your goals, design them, and execute them with pseudo-algebraic precision.
Which sounds intimidating, but it's really not. I mean, applying mathematical structure to behavioral psychology is just a fascinating leap.
It is.
What this material teaches us is how to see the invisible structures that are, already running our lives. Right now, you are operating on a system.
Whether you know it or not.
Exactly. It might be an unconscious one, it might be a highly reactive one, but it's definitely a system. By using the specific formulas and representation modes outlined in this text, you are going to learn how to turn your abstract desires,
Like the things you just sort of wish would happen.
yeah, those vague wishes, you're going to turn them into executable code. It removes the total mystery from why certain habits stick and why others just evaporate.
I love that phrase, executable code for your life.
Yeah.
But, I mean, applying pseudo-algebra to behavioral psychology, that's a massive paradigm shift.
Oh, huge.
So walk us through how this math actually functions without, stripping the humanity out of the process. Because when you first hear the words math and algebra associated with feelings,
People panic.
yeah, the immediate reaction is total resistance. We don't view our messy lives as clean equations.
And that resistance is completely natural because we tend to view math as rigid and emotion as very fluid. It's important to clarify right away that Meta-Matics is not arithmetic.
Okay, so no calculators required.
No calculators. You aren't crunching numbers or trying to solve for X to find a, definitive numerical answer. It's a formal architecture that makes transformation visible and mappable.
Okay, I see.
It borrows the structure of algebra, specifically like the way algebra shows relationships and ratios between different variables to map the meaning and the mechanics of your life. It gives form to the fluid, basically.
So we're borrowing the logic of math, the syntax of it, but plugging in our lived experiences.
That's the core of it, yeah. Before you can build a new reality, you need a new language to describe it. We are moving from the conceptual realm.
What the source calls the meta-mind, right?
Right, moving from the meta-mind directly into formalizing our reality using what the text defines as System 1.
System 1.
Okay. Also known as the Pseudo-Algebraic Concept Mapping System. And this all hinges on one central equation.
Which is what we're all here for. Let's hear it.
The equation is A over B integrated with C over D.
Okay, so written out mathematically, that's A/B, then a circle plus sign, then C/D.
Exactly.
Let's break those variables down for everyone listening.
Yeah.
What are A, B, C, and D actually representing when we look at our own daily routines?
Sure, let's start with the numerator. So A and C, the text calls these iterators.
Iterators.
You can think of iterators as the content. It is what you bring to the table. It's your raw material.
Like talent.
Yeah, it could be your innate skill, your desire, your raw energy, your curiosity. It is the internal fuel that drives an action.
Got it. The internal engine. But an engine doesn't just run in a white room. It runs on a specific road in specific weather.
Which brings us to the denominators, B and D. These are the delineators.
Delineators.
Right. Delineators are the context. They are the filter, the environment, the physical constraints, or even the support systems that actively shape the iterator. An iterator never exists in a vacuum.
Never.
No. It is always being acted upon by its environment.
So just to ground this, if A is my raw ability to focus, B might be the, I don't know, the noisy open plan office I'm sitting in.
Perfect application, yes. Now let's look at the operators, the mathematical symbols connecting these letters.
Right, the slash and the plus.
Yes. The division slash, the line separating A and B, that means filtered by or shaped by. The type makes a really crucial point here. The denominator is always the shaping force.
Always.
Always. So A divided by B means your content, your internal fuel, is being shaped and filtered by your context.
So my raw ability to focus is quite literally being divided by the chaos of the open plan office.
Exactly. And the output of that specific fraction will be low no matter how high variable A is.
Wow. Okay.
You could have world-class focus, but if the delineator is overwhelmingly disruptive, the resulting behavior is just compromised.
That makes so much sense.
Then we have the second half of the equation, C over D, which is another relationship between a different internal iterator and a different external delineator.
Right.
And connecting these two fractions is the circled plus symbol. The text calls this the operator for integrated with or synthesized alongside.
So it's not just a simple addition sign. It's not just adding them together.
No, not at all. It's about how these two separate relationships interact to create a completely emergent system.
The text provides a very concrete example to really ground this. It gives us this specific equation. Curiosity over support, integrated with time over engageability.
That's a great one to look at.
Yeah, so it's curiosity slash support, circled plus, time slash engageability. How does this translate to someone's real messy life?
Let's imagine you decide you want to learn to code. Your curiosity is your iterator, variable A. It's your internal desire to learn, say, Python.
Okay, I have high curiosity. I want to learn Python.
But that curiosity is divided by or filtered by the support you have. That's variable B.
The context.
Exactly. Support is the context. Do you have a structured curriculum? Do you have a mentor you can ask when you hit a wall?
Okay.
If your support is high, your curiosity thrives and expands. If your support is zero, like if you are just randomly Googling tutorials.
That's usually what I do.
Right. And what happens? Your curiosity is eventually going to be filtered down into sheer frustration and you abandon it.
Yeah, the raw fuel just gets choked out by the poor filter.
Yes. Now look at the second half of the integration. Time over engageability. Your time is your iterator, variable C. These are the raw hours you have available after work.
Okay, so maybe I have 2 hours.
But those hours are filtered by engageability, variable D. Engageability is how accessible and inviting the learning process actually is.
Oh, I see.
If your only time to study is a 20-minute window while you're exhausted on a loud train, but your coding platform requires a dual monitor setup and an hour of unbroken logic sequencing,
Then the engageability is incredibly low.
practically zero.
So your time is essentially rendered useless by the mismatch in context.
Exactly.
So the circled plus, the synthesis, tells us that your learning system is the reality of both these fractions operating together. Your curiosity constrained by your support, integrated with how your time is shaped by the accessibility of the work.
And when you map it out that way, it becomes incredibly clear why someone might quit learning to code after just 2 weeks.
I mean, it really does. But I have to push back a little here. I'm still stuck on this idea of reducing our motivations to algebra.
Okay, fair enough.
Because human motivation fluctuates wildly from, Tuesday to Wednesday. If I'm burnt out, how does dividing A by B actually help me?
Oh.
Doesn't this ignore the complex psychology of why we fail?
It's a great question, but it actually embraces the psychology by bypassing one of our most destructive cognitive biases, the fundamental attribution error. Without this formula, when you quit learning to code, what is the narrative you tell yourself?
I tell myself I'm lazy. I say I'm just not smart enough to understand Python, or I don't have the discipline that other people seem to have. It immediately becomes an identity crisis. I attack my own character.
And that is the psychological trap. You turn a structural failure into a moral failing.
Wow. Yeah.
But if you use the formula, you map the objective reality. You look at curiosity over support, integrated with time over engageability. And you realize, wait a minute, my curiosity iterator is actually very high. I really want to learn this. But my support delineator is a literal zero. I have no curriculum.
Right.
The formula prevents you from attacking your own character. It shifts you from self-judgment to system design. It tells you exactly where the pipe is leaking.
That is a massive relief for anyone listening. I mean, it protects your humanity by giving you an objective map of your circumstances. You aren't broken. Your delineator is broken. The denominator collapsed, so the fraction collapsed.
Exactly. It removes the shame from the process of change. And shame is a terrible fuel for long-term transformation.
The worst.
By mapping the math, you can look at the failure totally neutrally and say, I don't need to fix my soul, I just need to buy a better textbook.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't need to fix my soul. I need a better textbook.
Yeah.
But okay, mapping the formula is great, but a map is useless if I just sit on the couch looking at it.
Correct.
A snapshot of an equation tells us where we are in a static moment, but transformation requires forward momentum. How does this system account for actual movement in real time?
Well, that leads us directly to the dynamic mechanisms of Meta-Matics. A formula is just the diagnostic tool. To actually move, we have to look at System 2, which is the operational flow, and System 3, which is the regulatory mechanism called the inversion kick.
The inversion kick. That sounds intense. Let's start with the inversion kick because it addresses exactly how we interact with the variables we just mapped. The text formally calls it, cognitive balance through interface alternation.
Yes.
What is the inversion kick correcting for?
It corrects for cognitive tunnel vision. To understand the inversion kick, we look back at the formula variables, iterators and delineators. The text points out that whenever you engage with any goal, you naturally enter through one of two doors.
Okay, two doors.
You either take an iterator-first approach or a delineator-first approach.
So you either start with the content or you start with the context.
Yes. Let's use the text's example of learning to play the guitar. If you take the iterator-first door, you focus entirely on the raw content and the action. You buy a guitar, you sit on the edge of your bed, and you just start strumming.
Just going for it.
Yeah. You look up tabs online, you play until your fingers bleed, you dive straight into the doing.
Which is usually what we're told to do, right? You hear it all the time. Take massive action. Just start.
And it's an excellent way to generate initial momentum. But if you take the delineator-first door, your behavior looks entirely different.
How so?
You don't even touch the guitar on day one. You focus strictly on the context. You research the best acoustic properties of the room.
Oh, I know people who do this.
We all do it. You buy a sturdy music stand, you set up a metronome app, you block out 45 minutes every Tuesday and Thursday on your shared family calendar. You are meticulously setting up the environment.
Okay, so one is raw, chaotic action, and the other is sterile, pristine organizing.
Exactly. And the trap that catches almost everyone is that doing only one leads to inevitable system collapse.
Really?
Yes. If you only operate iterator first, you eventually hit a ceiling, you play chaotically, you reinforce bad habits because you have no structural feedback, and you stall out. The raw fuel just burns up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Conversely, if you only operate delineator first, you become the eternal planner. You are the person with a perfectly organized practice room, color-coded sheet music, and a pristine schedule who, never actually plays the instrument.
The illusion of progress without the reality of action, I think everyone listening has been guilty of that at least once.
Definitely.
So where does the kick come in?
System 3, the inversion kick, is a non-negotiable architectural rule. It demands that you strategically, intentionally alternate between these two modes of entry.
Oh, alternate, okay.
Right. If you spend a month diving into the content, just hacking away at the guitar, the inversion kick demands that you recognize your mode, stop, flip your focus entirely, and spend dedicated time purely on the delineator.
So you force yourself to stop playing.
Yes. You stop playing, you fix your schedule, you organize your scattered sheet music, you find a teacher.
And vice versa, I imagine. If you've been in planning mode, researching and scheduling for a month, the kick forces you to drop the calendar, accept that the environment is good enough, and just play the damn guitar.
Exactly.
Just play.
It reminds me of the biological necessity of breathing. You can't just inhale forever,
Yeah,
right?
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, like inhaling is like gathering context, preparing the environment, pulling resources into your lungs. If you only inhale, you eventually hyperventilate and pass out.
Right.
But you also can't just exhale forever either. Exhaling is acting, executing, pushing your energy out into the world.
Yeah.
You have to alternate the flow. You have to breathe in and breathe out to stay alive in the process.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The text explains the deeper neurological why behind this alternating rhythm, too. The inversion kick is what makes our position of one.
Position of one.
That's the text's term for our central governing consciousness. It makes it dynamic rather than static. What actually happens to a person if their position of 1 becomes static? Let's say they just refuse the kick.
They lose neuroplasticity in their approach to life. If you are always the iterator, always forcing action without context, you suffer deep physiological burnout. Your nervous system is constantly redlining.
Always exhaling.
Yes. And if you are always the delineator, always submitting to schedules and structures without engaging the raw action, you drift into apathy. You lose your vital spark.
Always inhaling.
Exactly. The inversion kick forces you to shift gears, which keeps the brain actively engaged in both the physical reality of the environment and the internal reality of your drive. It builds emergent capacity.
I really love this. The formula gives us the diagnostic map, and the inversion kick gives us the rhythm, the inhale and exhale of how we move through that map.
It breathes life into the math.
It really does. But this raises a profound question about identity, actually. Who is the you showing up to do this breathing? Because the formula requires us to assign a specific identity mode to every single variable in our equation.
Yes, it does.
We can't just show up as our default selves to every single task. That sounds exhausting.
And it is. You cannot, because your total authentic self is too massive, too energetically demanding to apply to granular daily tasks.
Right.
This is where we get into the representation modes in Chapter C. These are the specific psychological hats you wear, or the operational modes you assume when dealing with a variable. They are mapped using specific icons: person, persona, and principle.
Let's break these down really thoroughly, because the text argues that getting these modes wrong is the primary reason highly motivated people still fail.
It's a huge stumbling block.
Let's start with the person mode. The icon for this is a white circle.
Right. The person mode, the white circle, represents your true, authentic self. It requires extremely high cognitive and emotional investment. It demands your deep presence.
So this is the heavy lifting.
The heaviest. This mode is used for identity-level transformation and core values. It cannot be delegated to anyone or anything else. It is the raw, witnessing consciousness of who you are.
So if the variable in my equation is, say, ethical decision-making or vulnerability in my marriage, that absolutely has to be assigned to person mode.
Without question.
I can't outsource my morals or automate my empathy. I have to be there.
Precisely. You must show up fully. Then we move down a layer of abstraction to the persona mode.
Which is represented by a black circle.
Yes, a black circle. This is a strategic role. It requires medium emotional investment. It is highly context-specific. Think of it as putting on a uniform.
Like a literal uniform.
Metaphorically, it's professional mode when you're negotiating a contract, or coach mode when you're helping a friend, or disciplinarian mode when you need to focus on a deadline.
So it's still me, obviously, but it's a bounded, specific avatar of me playing a defined role. I put the black circle on, I do the job, and I take it off when the context changes.
Yes, which protects your core energy. You aren't bleeding your raw soul into a contract negotiation.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the third mode.
Finally, we have the principle mode, represented by a gear icon. This is a system-operated mode. It requires virtually zero ongoing attention from your authentic self because it is entirely automated or externalized.
Like a literal machine or a rigid rule.
Exactly. It's your recurring calendar appointments, an automated savings transfer at your bank, a non-negotiable 10 p.m. bedtime alarm. It's even a checklist on your fridge. It is a system that just runs in the background.
How does this representation actually look when we plug it back into our math? The text gives us this incredibly dense, fully notated example. Let me find it. Okay, here. Energy over daily structure, integrated with commitment over recovery capacity.
A classic equation.
So in the text, energy and commitment are noted with the white circle, person mode. Daily structure and recovery capacity are noted with the gear. Principle mode. Why must they be assigned this exact way?
Let's look at the biology and psychology of it. Can you automate your raw energy? Can you delegate your deep internal commitment to a goal, to a piece of software?
No. No way. I have to physically wake up and feel the energy. I have to personally, authentically care about the goal. That requires my true self.
Therefore, energy and commitment demand the person mode. They require your authentic presence. But look at the delineators in that equation. Daily structure and recovery capacity.
Right, the denominators.
What happens if you try to use person mode, your deep, raw, authentic self, to manage every single minute of your daily schedule?
Oh man, I would spend all my cognitive energy just trying to decide what to do next. Like, should I work out now? Should I check emails? What time is it? I'd be exhausting my prefrontal cortex on logistics instead of actually doing the work.
That is exactly what decision fatigue is. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and decision-making, has a limited daily battery.
It really does.
If you use person mode to manually track your sleep hours and negotiate with yourself every single night about when to go to bed, you suffer massive energetic debt. You burn out your executive function trying to manually control things that should just be automatic.
That is so true.
That is why daily structure and recovery capacity must be delegated to the principal mode. You set up a calendar block once. You set a non-negotiable bedtime alarm once. You let the gear do the heavy lifting so your white circle is free to do the deep work.
It's honestly like assigning an IT department to handle the server maintenance so the CEO can actually cast the vision for the company.
Yes.
If the CEO is down in the basement plugging in Ethernet cables, the company goes under.
That is a flawless analogy. And this brings us to what the text identifies as the danger of mode mismatch.
Okay, tell us about mode mismatch.
Mode mismatch is when you apply the wrong psychological icon to a variable. If you try to use principal mode, a gear, a checklist to fix a deep communication issue in a relationship, it fails horribly.
Oh, I can imagine. Checkbox.
Yeah.
Speak to wife.
Right. You cannot put show empathy to partner on a daily task manager and expect it to resonate. Empathy requires the white circle.
Absolutely.
Conversely, if you apply person mode to tracking your daily caloric intake, you will obsess over every macro, tie your self-worth to a number, and inevitably burn out.
You're attaching your soul to a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And this is where the inversion kick rule comes back with an absolute vengeance. The text details a non-negotiable checkpoint regarding these modes.
Can you break that down for us?
The rule is structural. If you personally interface with both iterators in your equation.
Meaning, if both the A and C variables are operating in person mode, requiring your deep, authentic presence?
Yes. If both are person mode, you must let the delineators, the context, be represented through persona or principle. Balance is non-negotiable.
So if I am bringing my full, raw, authentic self to my energy and my commitment, I cannot also bring my full, raw, authentic self to designing my schedule and tracking my sleep.
You cannot.
If I do, I will literally collapse under the weight of my own presence.
You will. The human nervous system cannot be hyper-present for every single variable in reality simultaneously. You have to let the gears carry the context if your soul is going to carry the content.
Look at your own life for a second, you listening. Are you trying to person your way through things that should just be a principle system?
It's a hard question to ask yourself.
It is. Are you exhausting your authentic self by trying to manually operate your daily habits through sheer willpower instead of just building a gear to do it for you? Willpower is person mode, and it depletes. Systems are principle mode, and they endure.
It is a massive shift in how we spend our limited daily energy. It is the difference between trying to manually instruct your heart to pump blood every second versus letting your autonomic nervous system handle it. You automate the baseline so you can be present for the apex.
Automate the baseline.
Ah.
Okay, so we have our math, we understand our breathing rhythm with the inversion kick, and we know which psychological hats to wear. We are now ready to actually step onto the path of change.
Yes, finally moving to action.
We begin the 11-step operational flow by designing what the text calls the foundational particle of action.
Right. Step 1, define the event atom.
The event atom. It sounds like quantum physics for habit tracking.
It does, but it's very grounded. It is the irreducible starting point. Before you can execute a change, you have to define the literal atom of that change, and you must explicitly assign it one of the modes we just discussed: principle, persona, or person.
So no more vague goals.
Exactly. A common vague goal is something like, I want to work out more. That has no structural integrity. An event atom is highly specific and mode assigned. It starts with identity. I am someone building a daily physical practice. That is an identity-level person mode declaration.
And the text emphasizes that this is a nested event atom. It scales from the macro down to the micro, which is brilliant because it bridges the gap between who you want to be and what you were doing at 6 a.m.
Yes. The nested structure is how you anchor identity to action. The macro atom is your person mode, the white circle. I am an integrated builder.
Okay.
But inside that macro identity, you nest a meso atom, which is your persona, the black circle. When I walk into the gym, I assume the role of the disciplined mover. I don't look at my phone, I just work.
Putting on the uniform?
Right. And inside that meso identity, you nest the micro atom, which is pure principle, the gear. My alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and my shoes are already by the door.
So the identity trickles down and crystallizes into an automated system, macro to meso to micro. person to persona to principle.
You got it.
Once we had defined our atom, what is step 2?
Step 2 is establish duality. Its symbol in the text is the classic yin-yang. This step requires identifying complementary tension within your goal. It is critical to note that duality is not opposition. It is not a fight between good and bad.
So it's not me versus my laziness.
No, not at all. It is the recognition of two forces that must exist together for the transformation to occur. In our fitness example, the duality is effort and restoration. The formula maps this tension. Effort, double-sided arrow, restoration.
You physically cannot have muscle growth without both the tearing down of the tissue and the resting phase that rebuilds it stronger.
Exactly. Recognizing that duality leads immediately to step 3, which is cultivate synergy. Its symbol is a triangle. Synergy is the recognition of the emergent property that arises only when those dualities interact correctly.
When effort and restoration meet in proper balance, what emerges?
Not exhaustion and not atrophy. What emerges is sustainable momentum. That is the synergy.
I want to use an analogy here for step 2, the duality, because I think people hear the word tension, and their nervous system immediately registers it as a threat.
Oh, tension is definitely a trigger word for people.
Right. Think about the physical tension in a guitar string. If there is absolutely no tension on the string, it is just a floppy piece of wire. It makes no sound. It has no utility.
Right.
But if you tighten it too much, if the tension is unopposed by the strength of the wood, the string snaps. The tension itself isn't the enemy. The tension pulling between the tuning peg and the bridge is what actually creates the potential for synergy. It is the structural requirement for music.
That perfectly illustrates how the Meta-Matics architecture views psychological tension.
But when people feel psychological tension in their lives, when they feel pulled between working hard and taking a break, their first instinct is to either resolve the tension immediately by quitting or to run away from it entirely by distracting themselves. We hate feeling conflicted.
We really do.
How does this system teach us to sit in step 2, in that duality, without panicking?
This touches on the core genius of explicitly mapping these steps out on paper. By explicitly naming the duality, by looking at your paper and seeing effort, double arrow, restoration, you remove the neurological panic.
Because it's no longer an invisible ambush.
Precisely. You realize the tension isn't a sign that you are failing or that your character is flawed. It is a mathematical, structural requirement for synergy.
Wow.
When you feel that immense pull between wanting to push harder on a project and feeling your body demand rest, you don't spiral into an identity crisis. You look at your map and say, this isn't a crisis. This is just step 2 playing out. The tension means the string is tuned.
The tension means the string is tuned. I love that. I really see the logic there. Yeah. So steps 1 through 3, defining the atom, establishing the duality, cultivating the synergy, these are largely cognitive mapping exercises.
Yeah, internal work.
They happen in your mind. They happen on paper. You are mapping the physics of your transformation. But change cannot survive purely as a thought experiment. It needs a physical reality to exist in. And this propels us directly into the meat of Chapter D, the container and the action.
This is the threshold where the conceptual map must become the physical territory.
Step 4 is space defined. The symbol is a little box. What exactly are we defining here?
You are building the physical, temporal, and relational container for the transformation to occur. Where is it physically happening? When is it temporally happening? With whom is it relationally happening?
Give us an example.
Sure. If your goal is to write a book, you cannot just rely on the synergy of creative flow. You need space defined. It must be explicit. I write at the kitchen table, which is the physical boundary, from 6:00 a.m. to 7:00 a.m., the temporal boundary, while my family is asleep, so I have 0 relational interruptions.
If you don't build the box, the synergy just evaporates into the room. The boundaries actually hold the energy in.
Environmental psychology totally confirms this. A defined space acts as an external trigger for your internal state, which brings us to step 5, analytical processing. Its symbol is a circular arrow.
What happens in step 5?
This is where you build the logical, sequential plan of action within your defined space. And crucially, this is the exact step where you map your specific Meta-Matics formula for the action you are about to take.
You literally write out the math of your morning routine.
Yes, you write out how your energy, filtered by your structure, integrates with your commitment, filtered by your recovery. You assign your person, persona, and principle modes. You lock the architecture in place.
And then we reached step 6, physiological mapping. The symbol is a circular arrow with a dot in the middle. This is where the framework separates itself from standard productivity advice. It's not physical action yet, is it?
No, it is somatic rehearsal. Somatic meaning of the body. You sit in your defined space, you close your eyes, and you vividly, granularly visualize the physical, emotional, and mental sensations of the action you are about to take.
So really feeling it.
Yes. You imagine the cold temperature of the floor, you imagine the harsh sound of the alarm. Most importantly, you map the physiological feeling of resistance that you know will arise.
It's mirroring what elite athletes do. Olympic downhill skiers stand at the starting gate, they close their eyes, and their bodies actually sway. They are firing the mirror neurons in their brains, rehearsing every single turn, every patch of ice, before they even push off. They are priming their central nervous system for the reality of the mountain.
Exactly. The central nervous system struggles to differentiate between a vividly imagined experience and a physical reality. By mapping the physiology of resistance, you are immunizing yourself against the shock of it. And they do this because of step 7, execute. The symbol is a simple forward arrow.
Step 7 is where the rubber meets the road. Take action.
But the text provides an incredibly strict set of rules for step 7. You must start small, you must start now, and critically, you must not redesign the architecture mid-flight.
Do not redesign mid-flight. This is a trap everyone falls into. The source text maps out a 7-day cycle to illustrate this flawlessly. It tracks a person trying to establish that brutal 5.45 a.m. daily practice. Let's walk through it.
Let's do it.
Day 1 is the awkward, messy beginning.
Right. The alarm goes off, the body immediately resists, the mind screams for more sleep, but because you mapped it, you stand up anyway. You perform the practice for just 15 minutes. And then afterward, you do a notation check against your formula.
A notation check.
Yes. You note that your energy iterator was low, but you honored the process. Your daily structure delineator, the gear, the alarm, worked perfectly.
Then we get to day 3. A subtle pattern is emerging. The body actually wakes up naturally at 5:40 a.m., just before the alarm. The practice feels somewhat integrated. The synergy is humming.
But then inevitably, day 5 arrives, the breakdown.
The breakdown. What happens structurally on day 5?
On day 5, the person slept terribly. The alarm feels like a physical assault. The practice is mechanical, heavy, and completely joyless. Every fiber of their being wants to quit. Now, without the Meta-Matics framework, what is the default human response?
The default response is to quit. They say, I'm just not a morning person. This routine is stupid and unnatural. I'm going back to sleep. They attack their own iterator. They blame their own energy and commitment.
But armed with the framework, you don't quit. You perform a notation check. You see that your energy iterator is indeed entirely depleted, but why? You look at your delineator. Recovery capacity. You realize you only got 5.5 hours of sleep because the neighbor's dog was barking. The system didn't fail because your character is weak. The system failed because the recovery capacity variable dropped far below the required baseline.
The denominator collapsed, and it dragged the numerator down with it.
Exactly. So the learning outcome is not, I'm a failure who lacks discipline. The learning outcome is, I need to buy a white noise machine to protect my sleep quality.
Wow.
You fix the principal mode, you reinforce the delineator in order to protect the internal iterator.
And because you diagnose the system instead of attacking yourself, you don't abandon the goal. You reach day 7, the integration. The body expects the routine. The variables stabilize. The A over B and C over D fractions are actually functionally integrating.
You have successfully created sustainable momentum out of thin air purely by following the architecture.
If you're taking one thing away from this breakdown of the operational flow, it's about how you handle step 7. When that 5:45 a.m. alarm goes off and your body is screaming in resistance and it's cold and the bed is so incredibly warm,
It's the worst feeling.
it is. But that is not the time to rewrite your equation. That is not the time to engage in analytical processing and ask yourself, is this goal really right for me?
No. Execution demands absolute trust in the architecture you built.
You build the architecture in steps 1 through 6 when your brain was clear, logical, and fully rested. In step 7, you are compromised. You just follow the arrow. You execute the step. You don't try to negotiate with the blueprint while you are actively pouring the concrete.
And this highlights why step 6, the physiological mapping, acts as the ultimate shock absorber for step 7.
Explain the mechanism of that shock absorber.
Yeah.
How does vividly imagining it save you in the moment?
Because in step 6, you proactively rehearse the exact feeling of misery and resistance. You closed your eyes and imagined how much your body would hate the alarm.
Right.
So when the alarm actually goes off on day 5 and that wave of resistance hits your nervous system, it does not trigger an amygdala hijack. It doesn't trigger panic. It is familiar, pre-processed data.
You've already felt it.
You recognize it immediately. Your brain says, ah, yes, I mapped this exact feeling yesterday. This isn't a crisis. This is just the somatic reality of the duality we established in step 2. It fundamentally changes the feeling of resistance from a systemic threat into expected, manageable terrain.
It turns the visceral resistance into just another mathematical variable you already accounted for. That is incredibly empowering. It strips the fear out of doing hard things.
It is the stark difference between being a victim of your unpredictable habits and being the conscious architect of them.
Let's pull back and look at the monumental psychological journey we've just charted. We started with this vague, cloudy desire for change, the kind of wishful thinking that usually dies in February.
Yep.
And we learned to map it using the pseudo-algebra of Meta-Matics. A over B integrated with C over D, content filtered by context, integrating with another set of content and context, giving us an objective diagnosis of why we succeed or fail.
We learned to protect our neurology from tunnel vision by using the inversion kick, ensuring we rhythmically alternate between organizing our context and executing our content. We breathe in and we breathe out.
We assign our true, authentic presence, our bounded roles, and our automated systems using the representation modes of person, persona, and principle. We learned that the quickest path to burnout is trying to use your raw soul to manage a daily schedule instead of building a gear to do it for you.
Absolutely.
And finally, we marched through the first 7 steps of the operational flow, taking an abstract desire, compressing it into a specific event atom, defining the physical space, emotionally rehearsing the resistance, and executing without negotiating mid-flight.
It is a complete structural paradigm shift in how we approach the engineering of human potential.
The text focuses intensely on the individual, but I know you see a broader application here that takes this math out of our personal mornings and pushes it into something much larger.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
The architecture of Meta-Matics is universal. The math scales up. We've spent this time applying the formula to personal habits, but think about the society we are living in right now.
Okay, zooming way out.
Think about our massive institutions, our educational systems, our healthcare infrastructure. Are we failing on a macro level because our society has completely mismatched its iterators and delineators?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating lens to look through.
What happens to a culture when it tries to automate its person values? What happens when a society tries to use algorithms, bureaucracies, and rigid principle modes to handle ethics, empathy, and justice?
Things that fundamentally require the raw, authentic presence of a person mode.
Exactly. Or, conversely, what happens when we apply person mode, human ego, intense emotion, and personal bias to foundational systems of governance that should be operating as neutral, unbiased principles?
We get systemic burnout, we get corruption where there should be neutrality, and we get cold bureaucracy where there should be empathy. We get a society that feels simultaneously exhausted by the chaos and totally unfeeling toward the individual.
Precisely. The math holds true at every scale. If you can use this framework to architect your own meaning and diagnose your own failures, you can begin to see the invisible architecture and the fatal systemic flaws of the world operating around you.
If the denominator is broken, the whole fraction collapses. Whether it is your 6:00 a.m. workout routine or a global institution, the blueprint is no longer murky. You have the math. Grab a notebook tomorrow morning to find your space, map your equation, and start graphing your reality. You are the architect now. Until next time.